powered by Home Projects. Now introducing the Home Projects Housemasters, Steve and John with part 2 of HVAC 101, what you need to know before replacing your heating and air system.
Welcome to Housemasters, presented by Home Projects. Continuation of our discussion about what you need to know about replacing your heating and air system. I'm here with John, my business partner, as well as our special guest, Tim DeStasio. As always, before we begin, we ask that you please subscribe to our page and like or hit this video at the bottom and share it with your friends. We also ask that you make a donation to our cause. Without your generous support, we will not be able to continue this educational platform that you will be enjoying over the coming months and years. So John, Tim, we were wrapping up a little bit about indoor air quality in our last episode. And so we wanted to continue on with a couple more questions more related to the contractor side of things. So why don't you take it from there?
Yeah, Tim, as Steve just said, the last episode was more talking about the technicalities behind the system. We got a lot into the types of systems, the types of fuels that power the systems, advantages, disadvantages of each, and then, some common issues that you run into on a daily basis on existing systems and how they can be fixed. This episode here is going to talk more a little bit about, what to look for when you're hiring a contractor, some of the changes that have been made to code. And then we're going to run some common scenarios and run them by you and get your thoughts on them, and we'll finish this thing up. But the first question I have here is, what should a customer who's looking to replace their unit or have a maintenance contract for that matter, what should they be looking for in an HVAC contractor before they hire them?
Number one is you want to make sure you're dealing with a licensed contractor. And as I talk to different contractors and technicians all over the country and North America, including, we're talking about other countries now, that means different things for different regions. Here in our region, in order to be able to install HVAC systems, residential HVAC systems, you need to have a contractor's license. In other areas, it may be a technician's license, but as a homeowner, you want to do your research. Figure out what state board regulates heating and air conditioning, and find out what certification or what license that business needs to have. And whatever it is, you want to deal with a licensed contractor. That means that they've taken a test and they've been certified by the state that they at least meet a minimum standard of competency. Now, that's not the only factor, because
just a minimum.
Yeah, a minimum. It is. It just means that
there actually is a minimum.
Yeah, at least here in the South, it's kind of the Wild West still. So that is not the only factor that goes into choosing a contractor, but that is like a minimum threshold, is that they need to be licensed, because if they're not licensed, they're not really answering to anybody, which means that they're going to be even more apt to cutting corners, and because they're flying under the radar. The next thing you want to make sure is that they're running a legitimate business. So are they a registered business with the municipality, with the state, the city, the county, whatever it is? Just because somebody has a business card, just because they have a website or a logo on their truck or their shirt, doesn't mean that they're a legitimate business. You also want to make sure that they are carrying general liability insurance, because there's a lot of potential for damage, not only to your home, but health and life, that an HVAC system can do. You're dealing with high voltage, you're dealing with fuels, flammable liquids and gases, you're dealing with high pressure refrigerants, all kinds of stuff, carbon monoxide. You can cause a lot of damage to a house if you don't know what you're doing. And accidents happen. Water damage can happen. Just things can happen. So that contractor needs to be able to show you that they have general liability insurance. So those are some of the minimums, and that really applies to any trade, any discipline. But consider what the service after the sale is going to be like. So how quick were they to respond to your phone call when you send them a message? Do you have to wait days? Because if they're not organized enough to get back with you to try to sell the job, they're probably going to be less apt to follow up after they've sold you the job and they've collected the money and they need to follow up. Also, consider what the warranties and guarantees are. The warranties for HVAC equipment is pretty standard across the board. Usually you should be getting a 10-year parts warranty, and on furnace heat exchangers, that warranty may even be higher. But the labor or the installation guarantee is really important. You want to make sure that the standard is a year, but I'm going to tell you, a good contractor is going to offer a longer guarantee provided they're able to come back and service the system. Another factor is how quickly can they do the work, and also ask what kind of quality control checklists do they make to make sure the system is set up properly. Because any HVAC system has to be properly started up, commissioned, and set up and tuned for your house. And that's where a lot of HVAC companies go wrong, is that they send out poorly trained installers. They're really busy. And the guy that really has the knowledge, the expertise, the license holder, sometimes doesn't follow up to make sure that it's actually performing the way he designed it. So those are just some of the basic backstops of choosing an HVAC contractor.
All right, and there's a couple things I wanted to add to what you said. When you say licensed contractor, that does not mean a technician that works for a licensed contractor. There's a big difference there. You can have a license holder, could be the owner of the company, it could be a service manager, it could be a qualifier of some sort, depending on what your particular state requires. But just because you're an HVAC technician does not mean that you're a licensed contractor.
Right.
And I see all over Facebook and Nextdoor and all these message threads, people looking for HVAC and plumbers and all this and that. And you have names being thrown around and you look into them and none of them have licenses. All they are is a tech for a company that has a license. So I wanted to clarify that because that's extremely important. The second thing that I wanted to add was you talked about lead time. If a contractor can do your work tomorrow, you need to go to the next contractor. Because if he can do the work tomorrow, nobody else trusts him, that means that you shouldn't either.
Right.
A good, decent contractor in the heat of the season or the cold of the season is going to be busy. Okay. And they're going to have a lead time attached to anything that they do. Now, if it's a ridiculous where they can't get out to your house for 4 to 6 months, that's obviously ridiculous. But if they can do your work within a day or this afternoon, that's a telltale sign that they're probably not a professional contractor that you want to be hiring.
Yeah, and there's of course exceptions, and that's not an absolute true or false statement all the time, but definitely during busy season, that's why you want to have an established relationship with your HVAC contractor with a service agreement ahead of time, because that usually comes with a service agreement that if you need them, they're going to be there within a specified time. The problem is us HVAC contractors and companies have those established relationships with our customers. And during peak season, when we get calls from people who are calling, just going down the phone book or going down Google, and they're calling company, they haven't done their due diligence of establishing a relationship with the company, then they're getting put to the back of the line also. And we're trying to make room. We're going to bump people like that to service the customer that we have an established relationship with. And we may be able to get to them same day or next day, but that's only because we bumped somebody who we don't have a relationship with. So maybe the clarification would be is if your contractor is not busy, if he or she is not covered up for 10, 11 months out of the year, then there's probably a reason why. Now,
Right.
they may still be able to get to you next day by bumping other people out of the way because you've got an established relationship with them. And that's what I want to try to impress on everybody is find somebody you can trust and then establish that relationship with them, have a service agreement with them. Yes, you're going to be paying them a monthly fee or however that is set up. But when you need them, they will be there for you. If you're calling people down the phone book or Google, you're at the mercy of the guys who aren't busy. And there's a reason why they're not busy.
Right.
And I got one more question too. You touched on being licensed. Also touch on what is required by building code for system replacements. I get questions all the time. People are having their units replaced, ductwork being replaced, and they find out that a building permit has to be pulled or an equipment permit has to be pulled. You are a licensed trade, which is inherent with your license, and what you do has to be inspected. Can you touch on that just real quickly?
Sure. So, because of the inherent danger of HVAC, the permit has to be pulled anytime equipment's getting replaced. It's at least in this state, North Carolina. Now, that is something that from state to state, even within the state from area to area, that may change. I know there's still some counties in rural areas that don't require permits. So you want to, but if your area requires permits, and most do now, then you want to pull a permit. You want your contractor to pull a permit for their trade. So that at least in this area and most areas that are developed, anytime HVAC equipment is replaced, a permit needs to be pulled. If a duct system is replaced, it also needs to be pulled. A permit needs to be pulled because now codes require that duct systems get leak tested if a certain percentage of that duct system gets replaced. Some other things that have to get done are load calculations. Sometimes the inspections office wants to see that load calculation, so they can request that. But I tell my homeowners all the time, because they say, well, do we really have to pull a permit? There's kind of the stigma. Well, if the inspector comes in here, then he's going to make me change this, and he's going to make me do that. And, I had my brother-in-law put in a shower, last year. Is he going to be looking for that? Well, I can't speak to what the inspector is going to look at, but I can tell you that a permit is the cheapest insurance you can buy. Because if your house burns down and they trace it back to your heating and air conditioning system, what's likely going to happen is your insurance company is going to say, well, where's the permit? And if your contractor didn't pull a permit, then it was an illegally installed system, and that is their out for paying for your damage. So yes, a permit is the cheapest insurance you can buy. Do it legit. Find a contractor. Get a contractor that does it legit. You start cutting corners and it'll bite you, and I've seen it.
Yeah, and also real quick, when you go to sell your house too, if you've done substantial renovations or additions to your home, modern real estate law requires disclosures, and oftentimes they'll be requesting the permits for that work. If there was a general contractor involved, the GC's permit will be plenty. But if a GC was not involved and licensed trades were the ones pulling the permits, then your credentials will be part of the closing documents. I run into that a lot, and almost everyone rolls their eyes when I say you need a licensed trades because only they can pull the permits. So, thank you.
Tim, you mentioned briefly load calculations. Let's get a little bit into the weeds on what a load calculation is. Let me set this up for a second. We talked about sizing earlier in the first episode, and the thing that I want to impress on people is you can have two identically architecturally driven designed homes side by side to one another, literally next door neighbors. Both of them are 2,500 square feet and the exact floor plans, and they be a completely different energy model. And people look at me when I say that and say, well, how could that be? They're the exact same house. Well, first of all, you have different people living them with different habits. Square footage is not necessarily what you're heating and cooling. You're heating and cooling cubic airspace. You're not heating and cooling square footage. What I mean by that is you have a 25 square foot home, 2,500 square foot home, 2 stories, and both the first and the second story are 8 feet ceilings. And then the next house is 10-foot ceilings on the downstairs, 8 in the up. That's a completely different load calculation. So just in square footage alone makes 2 houses of the same square footage a different calculation. But let's go into some of the other things besides square footage that actually go into sizing an actual unit.
Yeah, and so the best way I can explain it is think about your typical igloo cooler. And the purpose of the igloo cooler is you want to keep your lunch cool. Now, you don't want to freeze your lunch, because when it's lunchtime, you want to eat that bologna sandwich and you don't want it to be a block of ice, but you also don't want it to be ruined either. So what kind of factors go into what the temperature of inside that cooler is? Well, one of the main things is, what's the cooler made out of? How thick is that plastic? Is the insulation of that cooler, the thickness of it, that's a factor, right? Well, we can convert that to the insulation levels in a house. What would happen if we left the cooler partly open, the lid open on it? Would it be able to maintain the temperature inside that cooler? Well, no, because we're leaking heat in and cool out. Well, that talks about, when we convert that to a home, that talks about how leaky the home is, and we call that infiltration. What are the internal heat sources? How many people do you have in the building? What kind of electronic components do we have in there? Nowadays, every room has a TV in it and a computer in it. Years ago, we didn't have that. So which one's going to need more heating and air conditioning? So when we start thinking of a house like a cooler, we can easily see that there's a lot of factors that go into what size air conditioning equipment it's going to take in order to maintain the temperature in that home. So fortunately, we've been doing this for a relatively long time as an industry, and there's math involved, and there's software that's got it all figured out. And that software is at the fingertips of your HVAC professional, and as long as he makes use of it, then you'll have a properly designed system. If that person doesn't make use of it, then again, you're going with guesswork. So one last factor is, what kind of climate are you setting that igloo cooler in? Are you setting it in the shade? What effect does the sun beating down on it or not have on it? And what's the temperature around that cooler? If you set a cooler down in Antarctica, it's probably going to be a different temperature inside than if you set it down in the middle of Florida. So again, those are all factors that go into how to size an air conditioning system.
Tim, you had mentioned earlier in the last episode in regards to, old systems being sized. And one thing that I wanted to impress upon everybody is, just because your home in 1984 was sized with a 3-ton system and you've got a 2,000 square foot house, does not necessarily mean now that you're replacing the system that you need a 3-ton system. There's an 80% chance out there that system was improperly sized. And the reason why is because the old science, for lack of a better term, of sizing the system in the 80s was and checking to see which way the wind was blowing. Yeah. So there was no science to it. That was the point. Right. And, speak to that a little bit.
Yeah. So, of course, as time goes on and we get smarter, we understand the science better and we get more exact. And so years ago, there was no science that sized systems. And so just because you have a 3-ton or a 2-ton system in your house doesn't mean that's the properly sized system. Most likely it's going to be oversized, because back then people had the mentality that bigger is better. That contractor did not want to get called on a 95-degree day and to find out that his system was too small and he was going to have to rip it out and put a bigger system in. So he put a safety factor in there. So think about how houses have improved. Whenever we have a remodeling project in the house and walls come down, those walls didn't have good insulation in them. Code's going to make you insulate that part of the house better. So there's all kinds of improvements. People replace windows during a time. Windows do have a significant, at times, effect of the load, especially when those windows get a lot of sun exposure. So all those factors go into the reason why every time an HVAC piece of equipment gets replaced, a block load calculation gets done. So a block load is we are treating the entire house as a block, and we're trying to figure out how much heating and cooling needs to be put in that block. Now, if you make a major remodel project out of your home and you're moving around walls, or you replace your duct system, then we need to do a room-to-room load calculation, because now we need to determine how much airflow needs to go in each room. It's not enough to know how many tons of cooling or BTUs of heat we need to put into this house. We need to go room to room to make sure that we put the right amount of air in each room of the house, so that each room of the house is a uniform temperature. Your goal, and as a homeowner, and my goal as a contractor, is to design a home that each room is within 2 degrees, maybe even 1 degree of each other. And there are codes that are starting to address that, where you as a homeowner can hold your contractor's feet to the fire if you have temperature imbalances when they've come in there and they've made major replacements of either your equipment or your duct system. It is not satisfactory for your house to be different temperatures room to room. Not anymore.
Okay. All right. So, we talked about the permits. We talked about load calculations, duct leakage. Let's talk about some common scenarios. Okay. And a lot of these scenarios are going to be very similar from the standpoint of the phone calls that you and I both got, because, like in the middle of July, our most common call was, can you come out and take a look at our house? Our bonus room is 20 degrees hotter than the rest of the house, even hotter than the hallway outside of the room. Explain to everybody listening, Tim, as to, is there an effect that the HVAC system is creating there, or is it something else besides that?
And this goes back to the HVAC system and the house are connected. They're all part of a bigger system. And so when you have comfort problems in a house, if the unit is coming on and blowing cold air or hot air in the winter, if that's working and you're still not comfortable in your house, then you either have an air delivery problem or a building envelope problem, either the leakage or the insulation levels, the performance of your building envelope, or a combination of the two. So we'll talk about bonus rooms. Bonus rooms are typically sitting above unconditioned garages. They're on an upper level, which they have knee walls. And by knee walls, if anyone is not familiar with what we're saying when we call something a knee wall, that is a wall that borders not the outside. It's not an exterior wall, but it borders attic space. And a lot of times the ceiling of a bonus room you may not even have an attic above it. It may be a slope ceiling that's directly part of your roof truss system. So it may not even have the full insulation values that you may want to have. So all these effects, that bonus room is being attacked by heat in the summer. The problem with knee walls is that they don't border the outside, they border the attic space. So on a typical 95-degree hot day, an exterior wall on the other side of that wall is 95 degrees. On the other side of a knee wall is a 150-degree attic. Which one do you think is going to be attacked more by heat? The knee wall or the exterior wall? And so that's what bonus rooms that sit over a garage typically are. They're being attacked by all four sides with heat. And it's at a rate that's so much more than the rest of the house. So your air conditioning unit comes on and it cools the house. So where is the thermostat typically located in a house? It's probably not in the bonus room. It's probably somewhere else in the house, in a living room, in a hallway that's an interior room. And when that thermostat is happy, the unit shuts off. Well, most of the rooms in the house may be happy too. They may be the same temperature as the room where the thermostat is, and everybody's happy. The problem with the bonus room is our air conditioning unit did not run long enough to cool the bonus room. And now it's going to be off for about 10 or 15 minutes as the unit cycles off. And so now it's going to get even hotter and hotter. And so it's just this snowball effect, and that's not a great analogy when we're talking about a 95-degree day, but it's just this effect that just keeps getting worse and worse throughout the afternoon, and that room never catches up until maybe 4 o'clock in the morning when the sun has been down, and finally things start to even out. So, can your air conditioning system fix that? Sometimes it depends on how bad it is. And that's where a load calculation for me as an HVAC consultant, when I ran into problems like that, a lot of times I would just do a load calculation on the room versus the rest of the house. And that would help me see things more quantitatively instead of qualitatively. But as a homeowner, usually bonus rooms, especially if you're going to be spending a lot of time in that bonus room, they may need their own little system. They may need a ductless mini split system that works independently of your HVAC system, because expecting your HVAC system to be able to control two completely different climates, the rest of your house and the bonus room, is really unrealistic. So yeah, you've got to create it's its own zone, it's its own climate system, and it needs its own thermostat and its own control. So that's why a lot of bonus rooms end up getting ductless mini splits, because they're a really quick, easy, relatively inexpensive way to get the job done.
Well, I'm really happy that you differentiated the HVAC system from the building envelope, because 90% of the times, the first question I would ask the homeowner was, do you have a room over the garage? Do you have short walls coming off of the roof? And if they told me that they did, instantly I knew the problem was. But
Right.
You don't know how many times we would go out to those homeowners' homes and they'd already had 1 or 6 HVAC contractors out there, and each of them had a different story. Like, we need to add supply, we need to add it was just crazy.
Yeah.
And none of it had to do with HVAC at all. It had
Right.
to do with actual insulation level around the building envelope.
Yeah, and I probably failed to talk about that as an HVAC consultant. And, we sent a lot of work to home performance contractors like you, John, because I would go into a house and I'd see that problem. And again, it's a combination of HVAC not really being meant to do what we're asking it to do, and a building envelope problem. So how do we fix that? Well, let's try to fix it passively first. And so what we would do is pass on the lead to a home performance contractor like yourself, John, and you guys would come in there and you would back up the knee walls with added insulation, but you would also encapsulate it with rigid foam board to keep the energy, the heat, from moving around inside that wall and causing temperature problems inside. And so if you can address the envelope problem, now you have less to address from the HVAC problem. And I know that there were several projects where I always told people to fix the envelope first. And I told people, I'm an HVAC contractor, but I'm telling you to call this guy first and then call me when he's done. Because sometimes I would talk myself out of a job and you guys would come in there and you'd fix the envelope problems. And guess what? Now it was tolerable for them to be in that bonus room. It was only 3 or 4 degrees hotter instead of 10 degrees hotter, and I end up maybe losing an HVAC project out of it, but it was the right thing to do. Now I will say that during COVID, a lot of people working from home, they found all kinds of comfort problems in their houses that they didn't realize they had, because they were coming home at 6 or 7 at night. They weren't there at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And they're like, oh my God, this home office is stuffy at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. It's hot. The sun comes and beats down at this angle between 2 and 4 o'clock, and it's horrible in here. I didn't even realize I had this problem. And so that's created opportunities for home improvements. It's also created opportunities for HVAC contractors to provide solutions.
All right, the next one, Tim, is the farthest room at the end of the house always stays hotter or colder than the rest of the house. What are
Yeah,
we looking at there?
and so again, that is every single one of these answers probably is going to involve something to do with the building envelope. Because that's what made me different from most HVAC contractors. But again, that's a combination of the building envelope and the HVAC system not delivering enough air at the farthest end of the line. And usually when that happens is because the duct system has not been properly designed or set up. So a duct system, you have an air handler that is on one end of the house, and then you have a duct system that runs the length of the house and it branches off and throws air. Well, as it throws air into those rooms, now you have less air for the next room and then the next room. By the time you get to the end of the house, there's no air left because it's gone to the places of least resistance, which is the closest runs to the unit. So there's an easy fix to that, and you just need to air balance. There should be throttling dampers inside the duct system somewhere, where you can close off the ones that are to rooms that are getting too much air, and that will push the air to the other end of the house. So usually those dampers should be close to where the trunk is, where the branch duct that goes to that room comes off the trunk. There should be a damper there, but a lot of systems have been put in substandard where they didn't put a damper, and a damper was a $5 component that, I mean, I don't know why they skimp out on dampers, because it's one of the, yeah, there should be one there, but they can be added as long as that is accessible. But a lot of systems were put in, and I don't know why they left them out, but they did. Or they were put in, but it was never balanced. All the dampers are wide open, so you essentially don't have any dampers in there. You as a homeowner can try to see if that is a viable solution by blocking off some of the air in a rudimentary way, at least until your HVAC contractor can get out of there. So you can block off a vent or two. I do not suggest blocking off any more than one or two vents, because now we may be blocking too much. We're starving the unit of air, and that can create mechanical problems. But you can try closing off one, covering it, and just seeing whether that seems to push air towards the back of the house. And if it does, then get a contractor out there to properly install dampers and do an air balance, and now you'll have better comfort. But long story short is that is an air distribution problem, and that can be fixed.
And I'm going to add one other thing to that. I live in a home that has this very problem. I actually have the bonus room problem and the end of the hall issue. And I'm about ready to admit something here that I'm probably not very proud of, but I have found that when my return air filter gets dirty, the rooms at the end of that line get warm or cold, depending upon the season, because I am now, as you mentioned, now starving my my air handler of makeup air, of return air, and it doesn't have the volume to push it to the other end of the room. So I head over to one of the big box stores and get a $3 filter, and all of a sudden the problem's fixed. And I should set a timer on my phone to remind myself every 18 weeks or whatever it is to replace filter, but I often wait till my daughter complains about her bedroom being hot or cold, and I go out to the garage and grab a filter. So guilty as charged, but that's exactly
the cobbler's children often run barefoot. I've been guilty of the same thing. I'm working on everybody else's unit, and then I get a little reminder of my thermostat. It's time to change your filters. I'm like, I don't even know why I'm getting this reminder. Then I look at the filter. I'm like,
yeah, that's disgusting.
Right. I'm a little embarrassed to have that. So yeah.
One of the other common phone calls we probably both got, and you're going to be able to tell right off the bat, usually when this question is asked, as to what type of builder built the home. But my upstairs is always hotter or colder, or it's actually always hotter than the downstairs in the summer. And instantly that told me that it was a track built home.
Yep.
And the reason why it instantly told me that was because track builders, their whole, well, for one, volume is king to them. but profit margin is king too. And not having to put a separate full system for that upstairs, and instead doing a zoned system that's not efficient enough for two full stories, that's usually what causes the problem there.
Right. So a lot of times that's a two-story house with one HVAC system and no zoning, and so we don't have one thermostat, and you can only put the thermostat in either downstairs or the upstairs.
One spot.
One, and so whichever floor doesn't have the thermostat is the floor that's uncomfortable. The floor that has a thermostat, usually, it's going to be the temperature that you set it at, but the other floors it's going to suffer. So it is now code, and it's been code for about 10 years that you can't do that. If you have to have one zone, either a zone system. By zoning, we mean we have control dampers that talk to their own thermostat and are connected to one HVAC unit, or you have to have two separate HVAC systems for each floor. So it is against code to just stick one unit in there and hope that you're going to dump enough air. Because think about it, is it a 95-degree day or is it a 70-degree day? Is it a 35-degree day? There's no way you can just put in a system that's going to create comfort for all those scenarios. So we saw that a lot. We see it, a lot in my market. And what we were able to do on some systems is retrofit them, become a zone system. So we put zoning controls in there. And then other times there was really no way to zone the system. We had to add an extra piece of equipment and duct system, and that's a very expensive upgrade. But how valuable is your family's comfort? And with comfort is also humidity control. With humidity controls health. So, but some systems lent themselves to be retrofitted, and we were able to fix some of those problems. But again, some HVAC contractors kind of shied away because zoning control systems are very complicated. You can mess them up as a contractor if you're not careful, and a lot of contractors just aren't comfortable doing that kind of solution. We were. It can be done sometimes. You also got to know when it can't be done. But that's typically just, and the only thing really you can do is try to improve the building envelope. If you can't zone the system, if you can't really modify the HVAC system, the only thing you can do is try to improve the building envelope to even out those temperature swings so that the second floor is a little bit more like the first floor. But hot air rises, and your attic is above your second floor. The thing that's above your first floor is a conditioned second floor. So, you already have some wide discrepancies in the amount of heat that's attacking each floor. So you're already behind the 8 ball. You can make some improvements. But at the end of the day, there's only sometimes so much you can do. And so that maybe that goes into when you're looking at a house and you see one unit, 2 stories, one thermostat. And then the other house that you're looking for has 2 thermostats in it. Maybe you want to think twice before you select the first house. It may be a few thousand cheaper.
And I'd like to add to that, the from an architectural standpoint, and a comfort standpoint, the big difference between a zoned unit and a 2-unit, dual thermostat unit is depending upon the size of your home and the location where you are, it's very possible that you need to heat downstairs and cool upstairs, or vice versa, depending on the season. And you cannot do that in a traditionally zoned system. There's some variations there. There's some ways to break in physics there.
Yeah.
But normally you cannot have one condenser and one air handler heat up and cool down, or vice versa.
Yeah,
Whereas
right.
with a true system where you have 2 thermostats and 2 sets of everything, you can. My house, that happens all the time. Because heat rises, I'm air conditioning upstairs and heating downstairs. I'm actually feeding the monster is what I'm doing. But that's if you're looking for that new home and you see one that has 2 units, that's generally going to give you the flexibility of doing both.
All right. Well, those were the 3 main scenarios, most common that I know I ran across. I'm sure you probably did too, Tim. Before we close out here, I want to first of all thank you for spending this time with us. It's been extremely valuable.
It has.
I know it's going to be valuable to the homeowners that watch this video and the last one. But I'd like to give you 30 seconds or so to, give us a brief summary of, what your thoughts are here and, what's an outgoing message that you'd like to give homeowners that are entering the cooling season in the next coming months and what they should be looking for?
Be proactive with your systems. If you think you might have a problem, get it checked out early. If you think you are in the market to replace your system, get it done early, because there is no fluctuation. It's only going one direction, and that's up. That's what the costs are doing. Select your HVAC contractor carefully. Establish a relationship with them. Make sure you can trust them. Make sure that you can trust their competence. And establish that relationship with them where they appreciate you as a customer and they're going to be there for you when you need them the most. If you treat your HVAC like a commodity, like a throwaway thing that is here today and you can just get another one tomorrow, if you treat your system and your contractor like that, you'll regret it. Treat it like something valuable. It's an important part of your house. It's your house is a system that's an important, very big part of your system. It's an investment. It's a capital investment in your house. When you treat things like capital investments, then you're gonna put the value in them that you need. And there are very few competent, honest HVAC contractors out there. And you may have to kiss a few frogs before you find one. But once you find one, treat them well, because if you don't, there's a lot of other people that might. And so make sure that you appreciate that relationship with them, because it's a two-way street.
All right. Well, couldn't have said it better myself. Again, Tim, we greatly appreciate the time. Thanks for all your expertise. Appreciate the relationship through all the years. And over to you, partner.
Well, yes, I second all John's comments there, Tim. As we start out with this, we all had a little history lesson on how long we've known each other, and the last 2 hours of what you've been talking about is why we had you on here, and I expect we'll get lots of comments from our viewers, which we will feed on to you, and I venture to say we'll probably do this several more times as we dive deeper into 102, 103, the further levels of detail, and allow you to kind of flex your muscles a little bit more as you can educate us even further onto the benefits of our HVAC systems and as it relates to other parts of the home. But we're at the end of today's part 2, and I want to thank everybody for hanging out with us here. Again, subscribe to the channel, like this video, share it, and share it on your socials. Let people know that we are out here doing this. It is our mission at Housemasters and Home Projects to share the hard knocks stories that the three of us have been through and allow you to learn from those, and really just share with the world better ways to be quality homeowners with better HVAC and indoor air quality. So, Tim, thank you again, once again, and everyone have a good evening. We'll check you on the backside.
Thanks.
Peace.
Don't forget to like our video and subscribe. Leave a comment or question while you're at it. Your support is very important. Visit www.homeprojects.com to donate via PayPal or GoFundMe. Thank you!